I thought we'd do a bit on. We've all heard about the cost of lockdown, so the economic cost, the NHS waiting list, you can name it, right? It's been a complete disaster. But I'm talking about the cost of supporting lockdowns for the various mainstream media goons that supported them, and it's just fun to see them now get their comeuppance. And I was going to focus on that. So very much the two themes, legacy media losing it and being punished for COVID hysteria. So the first one is GB News, which full disclosure I do work for, is beating Piers Morgan in the ratings. And Guido Fawkes covered this. You can see there all the heads. You got Farage is smashing it, Turner, Stein smashing it, Wootton. But there's another one which even has Simon Evans' head on, because even our show, Headliners, is beating it. And we're on at 11 p.m. No big names, unless you count me. It's a paper review show, and we actually beat Piers' figures. And they have a huge budget. It's Talk TV, it's Murdoch. It's advertised everywhere you go. You see them on the...
And for people who aren't in England, I can't walk around without running into a bus stop that just says Piers Morgan on it.
Yeah, and it's got like Piers with the angel and devil, love him or hate him. Well, you're not watching him, is it? It could be the slogan. And so this was just very interesting to me, not just because we beat him, but just because why is Piers Morgan completely full? And by the way, just quickly, parce Guido, which is a Latin word throwing in to look clever. We do. He says we don't break news, and it's just comedians reading the papers. Makes it sound like we're sat there like your dad, just reading the paper silently. Like we don't just read the papers. We add commentary, and we do sometimes break news if it comes out. But anyway. But it's good that he covered it. I don't know if you scroll down, it says we beat him somewhere, but you can or not. It's in there somewhere. Anyway, you can check it yourself at home. I'm sure you will. So they're not Lotus Eaters numbers, by the way, like the mighty Lotus Eaters, but we are smashing.
Stop it.
Yeah, but we are. Well, you do really well, don't you? But we are beating Piers. So I just thought it was interesting. And it's like, why has this happened? Is it because... Oh, and by the way, it's so bad that Piers has had to go on a 6-week holiday. I don't know if we have that in the Express. He suddenly had to go on a sort of enforced holiday.
Oh, I'm sure. Is this like Andrew Neil's holiday, where he just decided I've had enough? And left?
Yes, it's very much related to his viewing figures. I don't know. Have you seen Piers' show?
I watched the first episode and then put a clip up on my Twitter, just being like, I'm disappointed in this. Because one of the weirdest things was just the fact that his name was friggin' everywhere. I don't know if I showed you those photos.
Oh yeah,
it was on the roof.
It's on the ceiling.
It's just
in case he forgets it.
He's got like 3 things behind him on his desk, in front of the Chiron, and then on the roof there's his name, Piers Morgan. I was like, okay.
And and some people said he really lost it with the Trump thing. He got big views. Well, Trump said this. He got big views, good numbers, great numbers for the Trump thing, didn't he? But then he did there was that weird video. It looked like Trump had stormed out, but he hadn't really.
Yeah, so Piers betrayed his first guest, which is the best thing you want to do, especially to a big name like Trump, obviously, and then thought he would get away with it.
Yeah.
So of course you won.
Yes.
Like, you're not working for the Mirror anymore.
That's it. It was fake news in an era. We're in the podcast era now. We're in the era of authenticity, and then Piers is doing that. And I think that's why people like Mark Stein are beating him, because they're much more authentic. And but anyway, I'm sure Piers doesn't mind that we're beating his figures. And as Alan Partridge would say, I think we have a video which confirms.
I can't be with you because I'm on a nationwide tour, performing in person each night to an audience bigger than Piers Morgan gets on the actual telly. But the good thing about Piers is it doesn't bother him.
So it doesn't bother him. I know, it's just so funny that exists. It doesn't bother him. He's just gone on a 6-week holiday. But I just wondered if this was part of the shift away from the legacy media, and a result of promoting this COVID hysteria, right? Because COVID was kind of the acid test. It's like, do you think it's okay for the government to lock us in our houses, take away our jobs, stop us seeing dying loved ones, force you to take a vaccine, potential vaccine passports? Or are you against all that?
Do you believe in human rights?
Right.
And some people didn't pass that test.
Right. And what Piers did is he didn't realize he has this audience. I don't have anything against Piers Morgan, by the way. It's just an interesting story. He alienated his audience by not understanding that. And if you look at this tweet, where he said, to all the anti-vaxxer COV idiots, predictably now screaming that they won't have the jab, let me say this. If it's approved, then I will have it done live on TV. If you refuse to have it, then no more flying for you and no using the NHS if you get COVID deal. And people forgot he tweeted this. I was always reminding people, but people forgot that he took that stance. And you could say he's sort of joking, but is he joking? Quite a lot of people took this stance that...
Genuinely. People were saying you shouldn't have access to the NHS. It was like, okay, but you're fat, so what do we do about you?
Exactly. And that was, and by the way, I pointed out, I don't know if we have my tweet, not to make it about me, but I pointed this out to him and managed to get blocked. And this tweet, my tweet it's one of those tweets that unexpectedly did well. I got 12.6 thousand likes. Weirdly, Twitter revised it down to like 11,000. I don't know how they did. Elon Musk needs to sort that out. But I said, so Piers Morgan says the unvaccinated shouldn't receive healthcare. Edwina Curry thinks they shouldn't be allowed out in public. And New Zealand's PM has had them moved on from their jobs. Let me know when this goes too far for you, assuming I haven't already disappeared. So that's not even that great a tweet, but it did very well. So, but I pointed out, and people were going to me, when did Piers say this? But he did say it. Ironically, he's disappeared now on holiday.
It's such a good litmus test, as you say, which is just, well, do you actually believe that people have any rights at all, frankly?
Yeah.
Because if you're going to take that all of this is fine, then you don't.
Yeah.
You can't, by definition.
Exactly. And I think when he's now reaping what he sowed, because he's lost his, lots of people have said we're not going to watch Piers after what he did. Loads of people comment on my thing, we're not watching because of that. And it's interesting that Mark Stein does so well, because no one could really say Mark Stein's a massive name in this country. He does quite well in the US, but he's smashing Piers' numbers. Why? To me, it's because he talks about vaccine. He talks about, he's honest and authentic, and people respond to that.
Yeah.
Whereas the time of Piers is kind of the mainstream media stitch-ups, it was kind of over.
I mean, a guy that really thought he could get away with smearing Trump by doing deceptive editing and thinking that would work. It was like, as I said, he got done for working at the Mail for putting out fake news. And it's just like, yeah, doing fake news doesn't make you popular when you actually have to be held accountable now.
Yeah.
Because it's the internet age
Exactly.
and not the papers age where you could just jump around and no one cared, because no
Yeah.
one cared who you were anyway, because it's the papers.
And do you know what that reminds me of? Did you watch that podcast with Matt Hancock?
Which one?
He was on the Diary of a CEO podcast. You just reminded me. And it was because we covered the story on GB. It was a funny thing where he didn't like the question. And he goes, yeah, you're gonna ask that again in a more respectful way? And the guy just went, well, I'm just asking you, Matt. This is just what we do. yeah, just ask more respectful. We'll do it again. It's a podcast. This is
live,
all
you
going
moron.
in. Yeah. He's going, we'll do it again. We'll just do it again. And he's
Oh,
going, well,
God.
I'm just saying, no, just ask it more. Yeah, ask it more respectfully. It's like,
That's literally a South Park sketch or something, isn't it?
right. It
Whereas-
was definitely pure partridge. It was,
Just do it again. It's like, it's live, you moron.
I know.
This isn't fake.
Actually, until then, I was being very generous. He was coming across all right. I was going, oh, Matt's not so bad. He's not such a bad guy.
Adulterer. But...
Yeah. I was going, oh, he's got his own perspective on it. And then he did that. I was just like, oh, this guy's an idiot. It was like, just ask it. It's like me saying to you, Callum, could you just ask that again? That bit about Sweden. Yeah, so, people forget. So I'm just reminding everyone, people use this argument about the anti-vaxxers, so-called, shouldn't be allowed the NHS. And Sean O'Grady here in The Independent was another one of these freaks. This is what we do about anti-vaxxers. No job, no entry, no NHS access. So originally there was the thing about, it stops infection, which proved to be you can still
I think we're allowed to say that, but I don't know how much
Oh.
we are allowed to say, because YouTube is incredibly autistic
I
about
forgot
this.
to ask you about that. I forgot to even say, should I not be using the word? I meant to say that. This will all get cancelled.
No, but it should be fine. But just...
Let's change the V word to something else for the next whole section. We'll call it something safe, like the dodgy.
No.
We'll call it. We'll call it something else. You're right. I should have checked that. Sorry if there's any strikes against Lotus. I'll never be back.
You can get the full uncensored version on lotuses.com.
So let's rephrase, like Matt Hancock. Let's do that again. Let's say that again. Basically, they said certain things about the what's it, and then they were proved to be possibly. But this thing about the NHS, it then came to the argument about hospital beds. You're taking up a hospital bed by not getting it. You're irresponsible because you're taking. And that opened the Pandora's box of obviously saying, well, if you're obese, like Piers Morgan maybe, if you're a smoker, you're in
What
the
right
same
do you
boat.
have a hospital bed?
Exactly. Once you've opened the argument,
Are you doing a dangerous job? Well, you don't have a right to a hospital bed. In which case,
Right.
no one has a right to a hospital bed. Okay, good. Then we
That's-
can just get rid of the NHS, can't we, finally?
Right, which would be fine, but that's not what the NHS is. We don't ask, hey, how did you break your arm? Were you messing about? You know what I mean? Were you winding up Mike Tyson on a plane? We don't ask. You know what I mean? It's the ethics of the NHS is healthcare for all. So what this lot
Get
will,
to A&E, yeah, but how'd you do it?
yeah. Because if you were just horsing around, exactly. So I'm trying to not swear on YouTube either, but this. That's not what the ethics of the NHS are. It never was that. So the irony of these idiots is that they open the question, why should you receive help? And they actually open the door to an insurance-based system that I'd be totally down with. That's the funny thing. Because I thought about this. I was like, okay, Piers, we'll have an insurance system. I'll lose points for my thing in the arm
I'll
status.
pay a little more in insurance.
Yeah,
And you
exactly.
can pay more because you're fat, and we'll be better off.
Exactly. We'll take into account my resting heart rate is very low. I do strength training 3 times a week. Let's put it all in there. Don't drink, don't smoke. Got my testosterone checked. It was high, ladies. That's all I'm saying. Let's get that's the most tragic moment on this podcast. It's come from me. But let's weigh all that up. Let's have this insurance-based system that you guys are kind of saying you want, because it's not the NHS, is it? Singapore actually did it. They actually had, we've got an article somewhere, but they actually charged people for not getting the thing in the arm. They said, okay, pay for your own healthcare. But so they did it, which is fair if we do it for everything. You know what I mean? So yeah, I don't know if we have that link or not, but it doesn't really matter. It's just a link to Singapore saying, there you go. Singapore's unvaccinated may face COVID medical bills over $18,000. So that's that. And yeah, another one who made this point, by the way, at the time, while we're going through all these legacy media goons, was Mr. Andrew Neil, formerly of GB. It's time to punish Britain's 5 million vaccine refuseniks. They put us all at risk of more restrictions, says Andrew Neil. Why shouldn't we curb some of their freedoms? Now, we know people don't write the headlines. They write the articles and someone else does the headlines.
But the headline, the article wasn't any better.
The article wasn't any better. It was just basically going on about France and how great it is because they have COVID passports. Like, yeah, France is so great, bro. Whatevs. And this ties back neatly to my GB News theme because Andrew Neil left GB News because he said it was traumatic and humiliating to be on there. And it was this horrible time. He cried about it. Whereas now, of course, he's gone to Channel 4 and he's never humiliates himself at all, as we saw the other day in this clip.
I'm here to present the Andrew Neil Show. I'm on the mic, so get with the flow. Top politicians here on C4. It's just half an hour, but they all want more. I ask all the questions like I just don't care. So come on, Boris, and get in the chair. Thanks, Nadine. Nailed it.
Okay, if you ever do anything that cringe on GB News, just end it.
Yeah. I mean, we thought me talking about my testosterone test was cringe, and then that happened, and the scale of cringe was so much greater. I know. I love that he came away from GB. But I just thought I'd show that. That's what Andrew's up to these days. I'm sure he's a great guy, but, well, except for the terrible things he said about people who didn't want to get an invasive medical treatment with possible side effects. But anyway, it just reminded me of this from Kathy Newman as well. This is what these people are like on Channel 4. Let's play this one for...
What about C4 style?
It's still bad. I've watched this about 5 times just for this show, and it's painful every time.
C4 style.
It's not like a human.
Sexy newsroom. You know what? It's hard in high heels.
That is the face.
Mate, you've got to provide cringe warnings if we're going to do
Right,
stuff
I know.
like this.
That's the next level of cringe.
Oh, man.
I just wanted to show you, like, that is just reminded me of that, because that's what these mainstream media people are like. Like, who are
reptiles
they?
or something.
Who are these people?
Not authentic.
I know. Next to classic. Yeah. So what you're saying is you're a massive weirdo, alien. Peterson's putting her in her place. Yeah. So they've all basically lost their audience because of this. The fact that Morgan, despite the massive budget, is getting hammered by our little humble show at 11 o'clock at night. And, you know, the thing is, what Piers has found is you can't be in both camps. You can't be in both camps. You're on the side of truth and you get attacked. You do podcasts like the Lotus Eaters and you're totally based, or you're part of the cathedral, as Michael Myers calls it, the regime. And he's tried to sort of, you know, he's tried to go back like, hey, I'm anti-woke, guys. I'm really cool. I'm like down with you guys. Like, no, we all remember.
No, like, you're part of this problem. You have been for a while in that regard. So it's just like you can either be authentic or you can be a smear merchant. And when you literally open your show by being a smear merchant to Donald Trump, it's not going to go down well, obviously.
Right. And what's going to happen is more and more the people that said those kind of things that villainize people for not wanting to take this medical treatment, it's going to become mainstream, because we covered a story the other day on Headliners, The Telegraph, AstraZeneca vaccine. This is now becoming mainstream. And the more these things do come mainstream, the more Mark Stein is exposing vaccine. These people are all going to look very, very bad, and increasingly so. It's not going to go better for them. I don't see it happening. And they are going to try and backtrack, by the way. But when they do, we'll be there, because if you see my tweet when Piers tried to do this, I was blocked at this point, but I found him anyway. And he said, so nice to get the masks off. England feels more normal today than it has since the start of the pandemic. And that's how it should be. Now we have effective vaccines and COVID's mutating to weaker variants. We should all embrace freedom again, not be trapped in unnecessary fear. After 2 years of just heavy fear-mongering.
Like you were the guy promoting.
Yeah, so I replied,
fear.
So glad we have people like Piers Morgan to counter the hatred and fear stirred up by people like Piers Morgan. Not bad. 6,000 likes. Solid. Not trying to make it about me. But, you know, that sums it up pretty neatly.
Yeah.
And that's where we're at. Now, I don't know if we have time for the other one or not. I don't mind. But Rod Little was the other one. This was very topical. This happened just a couple of days ago. I totally backed the lockdown and quite enjoyed it. But was I just a mug? Yes. Chad meme.
I mean,
yes.
I quite like Rod Little, but yeah, 100%, mate.
I
did
quite
feel
like him,
well.
and that's even worse in a way that he's kind of vaguely on our side. He sort of gets things a bit.
But that's the thing. I mean, have you seen Majid Nawaz's breakdown of the psyops that basically took place in February of 2020, I believe it was.
Go on.
Like the 2021, sorry. The fact that Majid just breaks it down. Like, he shows you the people who were working for Her Majesty's government in the department of making sure the public were informed about COVID, and then the strategies they used. And he says it on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he just lays out, it's perfectly true. Weapons-grade psychological operations against the public to make them afraid. I mean, it really is the fact that a lot of people fell for this who otherwise would be well-thinking people. I can't even hold it against them, because what was done to them by the government is not normal.
Yes, Sage had that document, didn't it? The level of personal threat is not sufficiently felt. We need to
scare
up
the
fear.
public.
Yeah, absolutely, good point. And of course, we keep seeing those posters. Look into his eyes. And now that
You would
we
never
know,
bend the rules, would you, Boris?
right? And now we know that they've all broken the rules. It's extra absurd. Yeah, but look, you're right about Little. He's sort of on our side, but then he's against some woke stuff. He's socially conservative to a degree. He's basically associated with the SDP, isn't he? So as a lefty, which he really is ultimately, this is even worse for him. To say that he loved lockdowns, you shouldn't really be saying it. You should be embarrassed saying it only because what about all the key workers? What about all the supermarket staff had to work? What about all the delivery drivers while you sat at home? Those of us like me who lost all our work immediately, even though we're only, okay, I was doing stand-up comedy, who cares? But we lost all our work immediately. I immediately saw, like, this is completely wrong. The government shouldn't have these rights. Whereas if you were Little or something like that, you're just exposing yourself as, like, even though he's apologizing for it in the article, I still think it's bad.
Yeah, but there's also just not just the immediate effects, knock-on effects to everyone else in every sector of the economy just being screwed by this.
Yeah, and he also admits, by the way, his wife got it right, which is even more beta. That his wife got it right, and he was like, going, no, it'll be all be fine.
Come on, this is fair. I mean, he's owning up to his mistakes, which is, it's progress of a kind. I'll give him that.
Yeah.
Be charitable.
And it just exposed, obviously lockdowns were a radically different experience depending on what sector you were in. Either you lose all your work like me and people in the private sector and self-employed people, or you're working harder than ever, you're on the front lines. Let's say it was really as bad as they said, you'd be in danger as a supermarket worker and so on. Or you're getting paid fully or 80% to sit at home and watch Tiger King. So it's a radically different experience. So you should be very aware of that when you come out with really complacent statements like this. Even Lord Frost, another sort of relatively sound person who's kind of on our side of truth, he admitted in the Telegraph podcast he didn't realize people were at home. He talked to these people who were just office workers, maybe they were civil servants, I can't remember. They'd been in the office. They hadn't really seen anyone for a year. And he said he just hadn't realized that, and it kind of shocked him. Because as we've seen from Partygate, they were carrying on as normal. But anyway, so Rod Little's another one. He's not as bad as Piers. He's okay in some ways, but he the one thing he did get right in this article is he said people feel like mugs because they believe the rules, which I never did. They believe the elite were following them, which I never did. We saw John Kerry on the plane. We saw Nancy Pelosi's haircut. Boris not wearing masks.
Mass everywhere.
No one was following it. But he says people feel like mugs because they believed it, and I think that's true. But anyway, he's just another mainstream media person who got it wrong.
If you appreciated that segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content we have on the site, such as the interview Carl did with David Rearboy. And if you want to follow Carl and see what else he's putting out, you can follow him on Getter at Carl Benjamin on Getter. Thank you and goodbye.